For many years on the front lines in the fight against abortion. The groups represented in this evening's roundtable have worked through education, parliamentary lobbying, student activism, prayer vigils, and helping the walking wounded through a previous abortion decision to come to a place of total healing. Not just in the UK, I might add, but also in the continent of Africa too, and hopefully we're going to have Uju joining us later. Sadly, she's running late from a train at the moment. In no particular order, allow me to introduce our roundtable this evening. We've got Rachel Mackenzie from Rachel's Vineyard. Great to have you back, Rachel. She's been here most of the weekend, I'm going to be honest about that. We can't get rid of her. It's wonderful to have John Deighan with us, CEO of SPUC Scotland. Thanks for joining us tonight. We've got Bernadette Waddelove from the Alliance, APS, Alliance of Pro-Life Students. I always get confused between that and ADF. Please forgive me. Too many alliances out there, it would appear. Moving on, we've got Rob Colquhoun from 40 Days for Life, not only praying, leading and managing prayers outside of vigils, but actually sticking up more and more for expressive rights, the right to even pray in public space. Remarkable that we're answering that question in this day and age. And I will introduce Uju from the Culture of Life for Africa when she hopefully joins us later on this evening. Right, folks, pleasure to have you here. You know the rules, speak into the mic, speak directly to camera, because we're answering the questions that people have put forward to us. I've broken them into three broad categories, but first of all, just a few practicalities about abortion. Maybe I'll pass this one to you, John. What happens to the babies' bodies after they are aborted in the United Kingdom?
Well, as far as I'm aware, they're treated as medical waste, so the likelihood is that they will be incinerated. There's no provision really, unless the women ask for some particular different treatment. I believe that's what would happen.
Brilliant. And to follow on from that, has the introduction of these new DIY home abortion measures, women having abortions at home, has that changed that at all?
Well, it means that you have many women now will deliver a tiny baby at home. So typically, I'm afraid what they will do is flush that down the toilet. There are guidelines given to them on how they might dispose of it, but that I'm afraid is how we're disposing of the tiny human life at that stage.
Wow, incredibly defining. Right, moving on, another question that we've received, I think I'm going to pass this on to Bernadette, is do abortion providers make money out of abortion? And following on from that, how much money would the NHS save if abortion was ended?
Yeah, so my understanding is that abortion is a huge money industry. I think from anything, depending on the stage of the abortion, it can cost the taxpayer up to £1,600, I think I'm right in saying. So if we cut out abortion, yeah, it would be a huge money saver for the NHS.
Brilliant, very interesting. Does anyone want to add any more to the cost? I know you've done some research on costings. Rob, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, 98% of abortions are paid for by the NHS, the National Health Service. So Mary Stopes and BPAS are both charities in the UK, and so the National Health Service is paying for almost all of the abortions in the United Kingdom. They would say it's not financially motivated. Planned Parenthood in the United States is more financially motivated, but you know there is a financial incentive, certainly in the counselling of are you going to have abortion or not, yes or no. It's a 3-4 figure sum if you do have the abortion, and it's nothing at all if you don't have the abortion. So there is a financial incentive there. It's a different dynamic in the United Kingdom. Just coming back to the first question, BPAS, they do offer a late-term burial service for some of the late-term abortions that they do in the United Kingdom. So that also happens in the Netherlands too. So there are some burials of late-term abortions in the UK, but overwhelmingly just seen as medical waste. Almost all abortions are just seen as medical waste in this country. So.
Very helpful. It's worth noting, I mean, the introduction of DIY home abortions on the 30th of March 2020, has that kind of decreased overheads and increased the potential profit margins for abortion providers, do we think?
Well, what it means is that a lot of the abortions are taking place at home, and so the abortion providers don't need large buildings around the country so much. They very much need more, it's still being paid for by the National Health Service. So yes, the overheads are going to be a lot less pills by post. You're just simply posting the pills to the woman. It's still the same fee, so you're saving a lot of the overheads of staffing, buildings, etc. So in principle, it's saving a lot of costs in that regard. But it's an anonymous service, pills by post. It's terrible medicine. You're not even seeing a doctor or a nurse face in person. So, in terms of healthcare, it's the worst imaginable. Yeah.
And final question on costings before we move on to questions of apologetics that have been sent in, is if there's an abortion complication, say woman hemorrhage or it's an incomplete abortion, does anyone know who picks up the cost then?
Well, that would be an NHS expense, because typically women are just told phone 999, so they're sent home, take the pills at home and just conduct the abortion yourself, dispose of it yourself, and if you have any complications, you're treated the same way as any other member of the public. Phone for emergency treatment. So the NHS is picking it up. Whether or not you can then show that in the figures that it's tied directly to abortion would be a more challenging exercise.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for those honest answers there. Moving on, Rachel, I want to get you involved. We've had a lot of questions on apologetics this evening. Okay, so how do you make a case for life? One of the first questions, a striking one that I want to give to you is, when talking about abortion, is it best to when talking about abortion, is it best to leave religion out of it?
I think it really just depends on who you're speaking to. I know personally that this is a God issue. This affects the creator of life, which is God, and we're not doing God's will. But actually, this is also a human rights issue. So if somebody doesn't believe in God, it's still about biology. It's about conception, starting from that moment, day one. It's the number one issue, this is life from day one. So whether you believe or you don't, human rights comes into this.
Okay, very, very helpful. And if you don't mind, I'm going to throw another question to you, and then I'm going to move on to Bernadette. Is abortion okay for an ectopic pregnancy? Okay,
so if somebody has an ectopic pregnancy, then the pregnancy, as far as I know anyway, it's not going to be viable. And so it's not that you're having an abortion, but maybe your fallopian tube needs to be removed. Mm-hmm. If your fallopian tube needs to be removed, then obviously the baby, the fetus is going to die, but this is not an abortion that takes place.
Okay, very helpful. Bernadette, do you want to add anything to that, or can I throw another question at you? Okay, brilliant. So hold the mic nice and close. Okay. If someone says abortion is okay because it's not a person yet, what should you say?
Yeah, so this is quite a common question, and when we give talks at universities, we tend to try and go through the common apologetics questions, and this is one that comes up a lot. Well, you've got to take it back to, where does human life begin if not at conception? And people will go, well, it's my body, it's my choice. Okay, well, strip that back to, if it's your body and your choice, you're assuming that you have radical autonomy over your body. And we don't actually live life as if this is the case. I mean, you can choose to get drunk and you can choose to get drive. You can't choose to do both at the same time. And that's because you're impinging upon someone else's right to life. At that point, you're endangering other people. And so I think when people go down the my body, my choice route, you need to go, well, A, you don't have radical autonomy, but also, when does human life begin if not at conception?
Very helpful, very, very helpful. And John, I mean, how many years have you been in this work for?
30 maybe.
30 years.
Getting on 30. Yes.
Okay, well, with your wealth...
I had a hard childhood. I'm much older than you think.
Well, you're looking pretty good. You're looking pretty good. We tend to age fast at CBI UK with all the street activism. Now, question is there a way we can find some better, a common ground with pro-choice? Is there a way to find a better common ground with pro-choicers when engaging with them on the issue of abortion, do you think?
Well, I think anyone that you encounter, if you want to have a discussion with them, I think what you want to try and do is understand where they're coming from, try and find what motivates them, respond to them where they're at. That now, I don't think I can ever come to common ground that we can ever justify killing an innocent human being or ever putting a woman through an abortion that will be detrimental to her in some way or other. But certainly, I mean, it's common sense and common courtesy to listen to someone's point of view, explore the whole range of their ideas and give the response to that. I think that there is always a reasoned answer that pro-lifers can give to those who are pro-abortion, but I certainly don't think that we close down the discussion with them and stand apart, unable to interact with them, share ideas, explore the ideas. I think reason can get part of the way, but I think your emotions and your demeanour when you interact with a person can give you an opportunity for opening up. Let them see that you're not judgmental, you're not harsh, that these are some of the preconceptions that someone coming from a pro-abortion position might have. It's also very helpful to recognise that people who have chosen abortion, who support abortion, might have some reason that they find very compelling to justify why they hold that position or why they've acted the way they have. And I think to recognise that that's a very powerful motivation and understandable, albeit at the end of the day we might show them that there is always a better choice. And I think that's ultimately where the discussion, if you can get to reason, if you can get beyond perhaps the emotional baggage that's there, the initial hostility, yes, engage, find common ground about we care about people, we recognise that there is a problem there, but when there's a problem, we try and find good solutions to it. There are always problems in life, and people can suggest good ways of resolving those problems or bad ways. And all we would say as pro-life people is, yeah, there's a difficulty here, there may be a crisis, there may be coercion, that a woman has ended up being pregnant, there may be all terrible circumstances or fears about the future. But let's address what the problems are and find a good way to resolve them, and not have recourse to one that means that we have to propose that the human being, the fetus, has no rights whatsoever. So that's ultimately what the abortion choice does. It means that your problem is so big that I'm willing to sacrifice an innocent human being for it. Our perspective would be, yes, it is a big problem, and we're here to try and help, but at the same time as helping you, we have to respect that there's a human being here who needs to be protected and supported as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. A compassionate but principled answer there. It's our good pleasure to invite Obianuju Ekeocha. I hope that I pronounced that okay, from Culture of Life Africa. It's great to have you with us. Are you okay?
Yes. Yes.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. Well, I'm going to fly a question straight at you. We were just talking about costings.
Right.
I know you're quite good at costings when it comes to kind of how much the UK government's been spending on abortion in Africa. I mean, how much money are we putting into not only supplying abortion in Africa, but also riding roughshod over people's cultural principles in other countries each year?
Yeah, it's actually quite unfortunate that most people in this country, in the United Kingdom, don't realize exactly how much of their tax money goes into abortion, exporting abortion abroad. The UK government at the moment, I think, has different channels and ways in which they are doing this, using up taxpayers' money to fund abortions. About more than £40 million is given to marriage stopes, well now MSI reproductive choices every year. Just think about it, more than £40 million, and the UK government in so doing is providing almost 50% of all of the funding that MSI reproductive choices gets to do abortions and to do their work around the world. There's also like a program like WISH, and all these so-called maternal care program that the UK government is funding, but then once you unpack it, once you go into it and look into what the money is going to, you see it's not really going to maternal care per se, at least most of it isn't. A lot of it is going to the so-called family planning, but even that family planning is tagged somehow onto abortion, and so in so doing, I would say just on the ballpark, probably up to 100 million pounds a year in some years would go into some form of population control. Some of their money goes through DFID, and then DFID still then ends up giving some of the money to Marist Stopes International. So there's just a lot of money exchanging hands, but then sometimes it's also quite difficult to track down exactly what the UK is spending, how much the UK is spending, and how much of that money is being funneled into abortion. And I think this is done on purpose, so that it cannot be tracked exactly, or even the countries where it's going to, where abortion is not legal, couldn't then come back and say to them, oh, see how much you're spending on abortion. So a lot of it is hidden, and that's why from time to time we have all these discussions in Parliament, where maybe perhaps when we're fortunate we find one courageous MP or one courageous member of the House of Lords then comes up to ask exactly how much is the UK spending, and even the answer to that is always very much convoluted, that at the end of the day we still do not have figures that we're holding. But for now, I'm always very keen on tracking each year exactly how much MSI Reproductive Choices is reporting that the UK government is giving. At least we start from that point and then begin to go from there. So I just think it's so much that even those in this country who say they are in support of abortion, who call themselves pro-choice, who are pro-abortion in principle, I believe that even a lot of them, in having discussions with them, they are not really interested in having their money go to places like, different parts of Africa or parts of Latin America, and then funding abortions instead of, say, for example, schools and real hospitals and real health care, real maternal care. That even as John Deighan had just talked about, like common ground, it's really hard to find any common ground to someone who supports abortion. But I believe that on this note of foreign aid and how foreign aid is spent in this country, I believe that we can get common ground. We can find some common ground. Because most people in this country, I haven't seen many people who want taxpayers' money to go into exporting abortions. But the UK government continues to do this, and in so doing, spreading cultural imperialism, neocolonialism. At the same time, when people are saying Black Lives Matter and we're starting all these movements, and we're respecting Black people here and there. But what happens exactly? What does the UK do in Africa? It is interesting that the people should be asking these difficult questions of the UK government. Because most of these countries where this money for abortion is going to, in many regards, do not want the abortion and haven't even asked for it in the first place.
Fantastic. Quick follow-up question. There was an announcement recently saying that they were going to cut taxpayer foreign aid on abortion. Should we believe it, Uju?
Well, it is actually money that is meant to go to UNFPA, United Nations Population Fund, if I remember correctly. And UNFPA is a UN agency that is very much involved in population control in various parts of the world. They are the ones who make it easy, sort of put an open door, if you like, to many Western organizations, Western countries when you come to Africa, because they are a UN agency. And now the UK government is saying they're cutting the funds, and they're cutting it by much because of COVID. I want to believe it. I honestly want to believe it, that there is some goodwill there. That's a starting point. And I don't think that when that announcement was made, just reading through the statements, going through some of the discussions that have happened around it, I don't really see that the UK government is trying to stop the exportation of abortion. Rather, they're just saying there's no money, right? So let's start from there. UNFPA has to be defunded, but very much importantly, the discussion that I think we all want to hear next is MSI Reproductive Choices, which used to be Marist Stopes International. They do have to be defunded as well. And I think that everybody in the United Kingdom should be asking at this point for that to happen next. So yes, I believe it, and I think it's a good starting point, and it's a very good move. So.
Brilliant, yeah. Thank you. Well, let's move things on. We've dealt with a bit of apologetics. We've dealt with a few costs. Interesting question here to do with the sliding scale in terms of how pro-choicers are treated and how pro-lifers are treated. And I want to quote it verbatim. It says, people who are pro-abortion often have no scruples about hurting our feelings or being kind in what they say, yet we are always expected to be so sensitive towards them. I think they meant to say unkind in what they say. How can we talk about abortion in a respectful way, but without shutting down freedom of speech or adhering to values that our opponents clearly don't keep themselves. Anyone want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, sure. I'll have a good go at that one. So I think it's about speaking the truth with love. And, you know, it's a difficult topic. It's a controversial topic. It's an emotional topic. And people have very strong feelings on both sides of the debate. So, you know, we don't want to subscribe to euphemisms and Orwellian doublespeak and, you know, dancing around the topic to avoid hurting people's feelings and political correctness and all this kind of thing. So, so I think just, you know, we need to speak the truth with love. We need to meet people where they're at. We need to listen to where they're coming from. And, you know, if we're so worried about hurting people's feelings, then, you know, it's kind of we're walking on glass the whole time. I think we've got to be unafraid of communicating our message without compromising our values, and to speak in a language that's understood by people, and to know that we live in a very secular culture. We live in a culture that's wounded. There are millions of post-abortive men and women, and if we can reach people with a message of love, with a message of hope, there's hope, there's an alternative, there's positive vision of the humanity of the unborn child. We can do that in a dynamic, professional way, then that's where we're going to reach hearts, change hearts and minds on this topic.
Can I just add something to
Yeah,
that?
go for it.
So I know from a post-abortive position that for me to get any sort of healing at all, I need to stand in the truth and I need to stand in the light. And so I have to stand up daily and say, I kill my children. And by doing that, it allows other people to do the same. And that's said with truth and with love together. And it's the only way we're ever going to get healing at all, by doing that.
Fantastic. Another question someone's put to us is to do with kind of narrow focus, right? You know, this objection that, you know, all we care about is getting that, you know, forcing women to have babies that they don't want, and after that we're nowhere to be seen. And if we're truly to be pro-life, don't we have to care more about other things also, like the death penalty, like, you know, nuclear war? Bernadette, do you want to have a go at answering that question?
Sure. So the thing about this is that people always overlook, you can only focus on so many topics at the same time. And also people always overlook the fact that pro-life people care about the children beyond the womb. It's not just, oh, we want them to have this child, we're going to force them to have this child. A lot of pro-life people go and do wonderful work well beyond the womb, and this is always overlooked. I'm going to pass this to John, because you were also nodding.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think a huge part of the abortion debate requires those who stand up for the truth that abortion hurts women and it kills an innocent human being. They have to be silenced and they have to be vilified and they have to be marginalized. So I think this is just one of the techniques, you know, throw mud. I mean, when people are working on cancer wars with children, no one goes over and says, listen, why are you working on cancer for children? What about people at the food bank? Why are you not out there helping them? So it's just a technique to try and make us feel uncomfortable that we're tackling the biggest human rights tragedy perhaps the world has ever known. So I don't think we should be ashamed that some of us are called to focus on this as our main issue. But at the same time, as Bernadette alludes to, so many pro-life people that I know are the very sort of people who are running soup kitchens. They're the very sort of people who are going round the streets helping the homeless. They're the very sort of people who are contributing to support cancer charities. You know, so that's the sort of person who's involved in the pro-life movement. So I think it's simply a means of vilifying pro-lifers, because when it gets down to the reality of looking at what the facts about abortion, what's the reality of how many women are coerced into actually having an abortion, what's the damage psychologically to women after abortion, what's the reality about the development of the unborn baby in the womb, they don't actually have answers for those issues, so they need to find devices to drag us away from the central argument and paint this picture of a pro-life activist that really is so far from reality and so far from truth, and it's a measure that's not used in any other field whatsoever.
Yeah, I think you know, there's distraction, deflection, and essentially it's an ad hominem attack of okay, well, you know, you care about abortion, but what about nuclear disarmament? And it's really I think it's the seamless garment argument of, right, if you're going to be pro-life, you've got to support, you know, be against the death penalty and this and that, and you know, yes, we do need to be focused on abortion, and we do need to think about, after birth, caring for women after birth. It's not just one narrow focus, but being holistically pro-life at 100%. But I think, seamless garment argument, for me, I think, other charities, say helping with the homeless, they're not sort of accused of other topics of, you've got to help with this topic and that topic. So I think we have to have integrity with, focusing on abortion too.
What's the number one issue?
Yeah.
It's the hashtag number
Number one.
issue.
That's
You
right.
get £10 for Thomas.
Very good. That is why we're here tonight. That's very helpful. So, just don't play to that sliding scale. Just speak the truth in love. That's the message I'm hearing. Now, guys, you've got some fans out there because people have crafted questions that they have stuck your names onto. So I need to go around and ask them. I have to ask these questions, to respond in integrity to these people who've spoken in. So thank you so much. If you have given questions, we really appreciate it. Thanks for, taking the debate and discussion further. Now, Uju, I want to ask you first.
Okay.
People in countries like Africa can easily die in childbirth. So isn't making abortion illegal there saying that a baby's life is actually more important than a mother's?
Okay, so here is the thing. First and foremost, the problem we have in Africa has to do not with abortion, where women are dying, is with things like bleeding. We do have a problem with maternal mortality, but we always have to go back to the root cause, because if we don't solve the root cause, then, you're making abortion legal, it doesn't really solve the problem. Women are still going to bleed in childbirth, they're still going to have all the complications in childbirth, and then they are still going to die, even if you have made abortion legal. But then, just keep that aside. In most of the African countries, the data still continues to show, and experience still continues to show, that majority of people are against abortion, and that's why we haven't legalized abortion in most of the African countries. The will is not there, the people's will is not there. Anywhere where anybody tries to legalize abortion, there's always strong opposition against it, so people don't want it. Now, isn't it a bit of arrogance, and even, if I may say, cultural chauvinism, that somebody from the UK would say, oh, but don't you think it's good that if you legalize abortion, you stop dying? Because that's not the truth. But that's what we're hearing. Everybody in all of the Western countries where abortion is legal, they're saying, oh, look, everything is nice for us here. But actually, what is nice for you is not that you have abortion. What is nice for you is that you have a national blood service center here, that people can, if you bleed, someone can bring blood from the blood bank. There are hospitals, there are ambulances. Those are the things that you actually have that we need, that we want, that you should encourage us to go for. And Africans should begin to walk towards those things on their own. But abortion is really not a nice thing, and culturally it hasn't really worked here. The data shows that women are hurting from abortion. Anyone who works in the pro-life movement knows that women hurt from abortion, and women suffer so much. So if abortion is legalized, actually that doesn't solve our problem. Just back to your question. As for illegal abortions, there are also many other criminal things that are happening across the African continent. Just like the last question that we took about, just deflection, as Robert had said, deflection. It's like, why do you do this when you can actually do this and have the problem solved? That we have so many things that are happening. Should we then legalize them? In my own country, kidnapping has become really, really common. There's, that people are snatching cars, people are breaking into homes. Should we then make it legal to make it safer or to make it easier? No. Because a society, there could be crime in a society and things could become quite evil, but I think that what would be the most, the worst tragedy would be to legalize that which is evil in order, or as an excuse for a society to get better. Because once evil is legalized, or once injustice is legalized, then there's really no hope. There's no hope that, there could be crime, but hopefully we're hoping that things get better. But then if you legalize that, then there is really no place to go. So the African countries, I would keep encouraging them, and we're encouraging ourselves, and we continue to say no to abortion. And we're hoping that those in the West who who have this concept of respecting people where they are and respecting culture will also respect that about us. What we need is not abortion. What we need is good health care, good maternal health care, good obstetric care, good gynecological care. That is what will exactly save lives of millions of women across the African continent.
Very helpful. Thank you very much. Now, Rachel, from Rachel's Vineyard, somebody has asked you personally, I hope you do know them.
I know everybody.
Yeah, she does know everyone, that's true. Does abortion affect fertility?
Well, the short answer is yes. And then from a personal answer, it affected mine. So my second abortion, where I was awake and I watched the abortionist count the body parts to my baby, I also had a botched abortion. So I started having lots of infections, lots of urine infection and pelvic inflammatory disease, and this led on to infertility. And so it was very sad for me, but I now actually see it also as a grace because I wasn't stopping. So the only reason I'm here today saying I had 2 abortions is because I was graced with really infertility because I wasn't going to stop. And then I know lots of people that have come to Rachel's Vineyard that are wounded and will be wounded not just psychologically or emotionally, but physically, that they've gone on to have full hysterectomies, not have children as well. So yeah, the answer is yes, it affects fertility.
Very helpful. And is there any studies that people can refer to? Is there any larger studies to kind of take that point further that anyone knows about?
I know it also affects miscarriage, so the miscarriage rate goes up as well afterwards. Many people that come to Rachel's Vineyard are grieving the children from abortion, but then on to multiple miscarriages afterwards, because at the end of the day, your womb becomes your tomb.
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking of the reference, because I actually did a lot of research. I didn't intend to do this, I promise, but I didn't want to plug my book, but I wrote a book called Target Africa, and there's a whole
We've got 5 pockets abounding.
I didn't want to do this. Now, I wrote a book called Target Africa. If you can just get that chapter on abortion, I have an entire chapter on abortion, and it is fully referenced. And I did cite some studies that had to, that went through the effects of abortion. And this is like peer-reviewed study from various medical journals. There was also another study as well, quite a comprehensive study on women who are coerced into abortion and their own psychological experiences. So if you can read Target Africa and go to the chapter on abortion, you can borrow it from someone. You don't have to get it, but if you can read that chapter, it's fully referenced, and there are several studies that I refer to where you will see peer-reviewed journals where it is allowed, because many times, as we know, there is almost no integrity now in academia as far as something like abortion is concerned. But there are still some people in the academic world who have done fantastic work on it. And yes, in that book, I do put a lot of those together side by side, so you can actually just cross-reference all that.
Very helpful. Don't borrow Target Africa, buy Target Africa. That'd be very helpful. And also, never memorize academic studies, because it could be a means by which to sell your book. So Uju's teaching us heaps about she's going far beyond just the pro-life debate tonight. Now, John, you've got a question here, which is from somebody, I don't know who, and they've said, I'd be interested to know if many young people want to get involved in pro-life work nowadays. And they go on, because when I hear what life is like on campuses these days, I can't imagine any of them being pro-life at all. Can you speak any encouragement into that situation, or fact-checked this person's statement to see whether, is what they say true? Is it getting harder and harder to be pro-life on UK campuses?
I think there's certainly been efforts to close down the pro-life voice on campus. That has been happening, and certainly SPUC and I know the APS have done the same, supported pro-life groups to make sure they have a voice, that are allowed to set up a pro-life society, for example. However, the thing that encourages me is young people always seem to have a sense of justice. They're idealistic, and whenever some injustice in society arises, they want to get involved, and surprisingly enough, lots of young people are getting involved in the pro-life movement. SPUC have several initiatives. We have a Project Truth Roadshow where usually we have up to 30 people will actually travel around the country. They will set up a stall and they will give out pro-life information. They will engage with passers-by. Now, for me, that sounds one of the most daunting things you can do in today's culture. But those young people line up to do it, and when you speak to them after it, they are bouncing with joy because they actually find that when they engage with the public, so many more people support them than they ever imagined. So I think we can get pessimistic and think that, oh, it's really terrible out there and everyone's brainwashed and they're all pro-abortion. But actually, when you scrape away the surface, you find that people are much more nuanced, they're much more open to the reality that human life is special and that abortion isn't the best option. In terms of activities, we have regular meetings with young people. We have an annual conference for the youth, which typically attracts about 180 people a year. We send out about 15 young people to Washington every year to participate in the US March for Life. So yeah, we find that young people are coming forward. They love the pro-life movement, and yeah, this obviously we'd like some more of them. They are going against the grain of the trend and culture, but that's what young people do. They like to challenge, and when the pro-abortion hegemony has set in so strongly and their lecturers are telling them that they must be pro-abortion, all the politicians are uniformly pro-abortion, they are willing to open. So I'm hopeful for the youth. I'm hopeful that the pro-life organisations working together can give them a platform that they can make a difference and they can start to turn the tide around. And so yeah, I'm hopeful for the youth. There's plenty of them out there. If that's a young person that asks the question, give us a call, get involved, and yeah, you'll find there's lots more people like you.
And don't just hear it from John. I actually spoke to a person who isn't from SPUC who said that SPUC Youth Conference is really where it's happening. So if that is interested, if you're a young person, that could be something you can do. When roughly does it run?
It usually is in March. I think we've got it booked. I know that the organiser is in this room. I can see in the distance, but I'm pretty sure it's the start of March 2022.
Brilliant.
So yeah, so look out for it. We'll put it out on our social media, on our website. But yeah, March 22. I think it may be in. Well, it won't be. It'll be somewhere in England.
Check out the details on the website to work out where in England it's happening. Brilliant. And Bernadette, another person's asked, and following on from that, I want my child to stay pro-life at university. Any advice on how I can help them now to prepare for that? Feel free to plug Alliance of Pro-Life Students. As I said, we have a great plug policy here, plug sockets to go around. So do, yeah, for this mother or father who wrote this, you know, where can they connect their child who's potentially going to university?
Yeah, so I think the heart of this question is, why is it so hard to survive university and be pro-life? And I think the fundamental, the hardest thing about being pro-life on campus is the fact that you're usually quite alone. And I think that's why we at APS think that student societies are so important, because it gives you encouragement. You don't find another pro-life person and go, oh, I thought I was the only one. Like the other young pro-life people out there, excellent. Instead, you create this group of friends, and you know, as John said, you feel like you can take on the world. So pro-life societies are really important, but fundamentally, at the heart of his question, as I was saying, was why is it so hard to survive? Okay, so it's lonely, and student unions, other students tend to be liberal, tend to be quite aggressive. Okay, so you need to be able to educate your child so that they understand the value of life, absolutely. Apparently we had a fantastic talk earlier about how to bring up a pro-life family, so that might well be worth looking at. But also what we look at quite a lot of at APS as well is it's something called the Munson study, and it's how to create a pro-life activist. And basically the first step of this is meeting someone pro-life, a pro-life organisation at a formative moment of your life. So 16, 17, 18, you know, you're starting A-levels, finishing A-levels, starting university, finishing university. So what I would also really encourage you to do is find out opportunities to have pro-life friends for your child, so that you realise that they're not the only one. There are other young pro-lifers out there. And also seek out things like the SPUC Youth Conference. Do I get a discount for plugging this?
Yeah, let's get that witnessed.
Absolutely. Try and find something like the SPUC Youth Conference to go to as well, because it makes them realise they're not alone and there are other young pro-lifers out there, and that suddenly makes life so much easier.
Very, very helpful. Now, Rob, don't feel left out, because somebody has made a home-baked message question for you too. Good luck turning this one into a plug, but if you can do it, respect to you. Somebody's asked, can't we reach women before they get to an abortion clinic?
That's a great question. So 40 Days for Life, we do prayer vigils outside abortion centres. And so the question is, can you reach women before they come to the abortion centre? Of course you can. You can reach young people, bringing them a message of chastity. You can reach women, through the internet, through social media, through doctors' surgeries. We found with our ministry the best place to publicly witness to pray for an end to abortion is where the abortions are happening in society. They're not happening in the parliament, they're not happening in the law courts, not happening in schools. They're happening in abortion centres and hospitals around the country. So we found the blessed place to witness, and we've seen 1,000 babies saved from abortion in 10 years of ministry as a result of standing literally opposite or outside abortion centres in the United Kingdom. And the reason that is so effective is that not only it sends a message to the community that what is happening there is wrong, it also sends a positive alternative for anyone who's considering an abortion. Here's a message of hope, a message of love of life, that there is an alternative. And many women have never heard that there are other people willing to help them out in society. From the abortion provider, they're just getting one message: have an abortion or nothing at all. So we are there with a choice, with alternatives. Any tangible need that a woman has, we are able to offer help, offer support, whether it's housing, counselling, financial support, any of those issues. And this is the place. And some of the abortion centres, you see 50 appointments a day. You're able to offer help to 50 women every single day. Simple leaflet, simple offer help. If they're not interested, they just walk past. But if they are interested, that's potentially a lifetime of regrets potentially avoided, maybe a baby saved as a result. So these are the grace-filled opportunities as a result of offering help outside abortion centres. That's why we believe it's the best place to be, and what a great place to witness for the unborn.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah. You can sign up for 40 Days for Life on their website to complete the plug there. It's well worth doing. It's well worth doing, and I say that with all sincerity. Now, final question, 10 seconds each, okay? Do you think abortion in the UK and Africa can be ended in our lifetime? Uju, kick us off.
Yes, I believe it can happen as long as people are serious, as long as people are praying, the people who pray, they're praying, as long as people are speaking. To keep quiet, because they want us to keep quiet. Just if we keep doing what we're doing and do it even more courageously, we'll get there. I believe it will happen in my lifetime. Maybe I'll be very, very old, but it will happen.
Let's hope not. Let's hope you can see it in your youth.
I certainly believe abortion can be ended in our lifetime, and I think it can be unthinkable, and I believe that we can see the end of abortion. So absolutely, praying that will happen, and with God, all things are possible.
Absolutely, they are. And I think the more people that join this movement, especially the post-abortive people out there, get the healing first and then speak up. You've got a voice, and we need to hear your voice, because our children's voices will never be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think it's really interesting to think about the fact that this is still a live political issue over 50 years after it's been passed. And what other legislation is that the case for? And it'll carry on being an issue until we get rid of it.
Yeah, the number of people needed to actually turn the tide of culture is actually very small. And if all the pro-life organisations and those who should be supporting pro-life organisations work together, we can turn that tide. So I'm hopeful that we can do that. I think we will expose the reality of the damage that abortion does to people. We can show that every human life is special. We can show a consistency in human rights. So yeah, I'm for ending abortion. I think we will do it in our lifetime.
Guys, what an encouraging and hope-filled ending to a brilliant discussion. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much, Uju. Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you, John. Thank you, Bernadette. And thank you, Rob Colquhoun, for having this evening discussion on this most vital, most important, number one issue.